Donald Trump is attacking the MeidasTouch network in a new motion to dismiss that he filed in the New York criminal case where he was convicted on 34 separate felony counts. It was a very long motion to dismiss that he filed. Harry, we anticipated that he was going to make the filing. There's other arguments that he makes other than attacking the MeidasTouch network and podcasts on our network, like the Michael Cohen show. But I had to reflect as I was reading page 15 and 16. There was literally 2 pages that were devoted to saying that the reason the jury convicted him is that they were somehow misled by the pretrial publicity of our programming on the MeidasTouch network. I mean, footnotes 5, 6, 7, 8 were all citations to the MeidasTouch network. And I was reading that while I was live on our program with Michael Cohen, and I had to read it multiple times. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, come on now. You're saying look, I know that we get more views here now than Fox, and I get that there's a lot of reach, but that they had the opportunity in voir dire to ask about us. They had all the opportunity in the world. They didn't even mention us during the voir dire. But Harry, I'll make it a little bit less about us. There were other things that he argued as well. That was just 2 of the pages were saying why it was prejudicial. But to me, it highlighted that, this motion that he said he was going to file, that he did finally file, it was a bunch of whiny stuff. Tell us what you thought about this motion that he filed. It's also notable the lawyers now are his picks to lead the Department of Justice also. So there's a lot to unpack. Maybe start at the beginning, unpack it, then you can get to the Meidas.
All right. No, well, I want to start with the Meidas because, I mean, surreal, but I'm so jealous. How do imagine you're reading this and this impact on national political life? How the hell did you manage? We're here, all of us. I feel this way, with a megaphone trying to scream, and you've obviously gotten the attention of the protagonist, antagonist of this big drama. So holy cow, hats off to you. But you're right. I just want to say separately, we found out in the last hour or so, this is a pretty big deal for people who know how things work in D.C. The White House counsel, remember, that was Pat Cipollone at the end of the Trump administration. He had chosen one, and he just axed him and put in David Harrington, who's a guy who was, yet again, another of his lawyers. So White House counsel, Deputy Attorney General, Solicitor General, head Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, long acronym, but exercised a lot of power at DOJ. He really is going all that way. Okay, so the motion. We knew it was coming, and remember, Mayor Chun said, I'll hold off on everything and sentencing. Go ahead, do it. Bragg acquiesced and said, fine, we'll do that first. And Bragg is now going to respond next Tuesday to the motion. The thing that really struck me about it, Ben, you're right, it was very whiny. It just basically recapitulated all the grievances that he'd made during the trial, the pernicious Meidas network, but also Stormy Daniels said this and Michael Cohen said that. It really has nothing to do with what's supposed to be some grand constitutional immunity-driven motion. But when he got to try to argue, they did 2 things. Remember, there's some, the immunity would mean that you can't be tried for acts you did in office. That's not going to do much for him. There's one little piece of it that was the evidence at the New York trial. But he wants more. And the old OLC memo figured in that says you can't prosecute a sitting president. And he wants to say just showing up for sentencing is kind of that. But even that doesn't get him where he wants to go, which is that this whole case is gone, buried, and dead forever. So he's done 2 other things that have never been done as far as I know. And I know he's not expecting Mayor Chun to do it, but I think we can tell, given the arguments he's making, he's going to roll the dice and hope for the U.S. Supreme Court, his old buddies, so to go from Mayor Chun, but then up on appeal, middle-level New York court, high-level New York court, and the U.S. Supreme Court. And he's saying 2 things. First, he wants to invest himself as a president-elect, not a president, with all the dignity and constitutional weight of the presidency. And he's relying on this obscure statute from the 19th century that basically says you can't mess with the transition of power during an inauguration. He wants to build from that a principle that says even now, to have a sentence imposed on him would violate in the same way as if he were president. And this trick that we talked about at the time that Jack Smith did of leaving it in abeyance, that's definitely got his goat. And the OLC memo, on the one hand, he's depending on it, but on the other hand, the OLC memo says, well, of course you can do it and hold it in abeyance. And he wants to say, no, they're wrong. You can't hold it in abeyance. You just have to, smother it and have it be fully gone forever. So it's a very scattershot and pretty ambitious motion, and one that to me says he's going all the way up, and hope the Supreme Court will extend its solicitous attitude toward him. And whether Merchan, who I think won't grant the motion, will go ahead with sentencing or wait remains to be seen. Will he say, let's see what the Supreme Court has to say? Anyway, final point, because you told me to end with it. What the hell? The Meidas brothers and the Meidas Network totally featuring in the biggest motion in the country. How do you guys do it? All right.
Well, I'll say this. So I think there's a procedural strategy to your point also with the sentencing by filing this motion to dismiss. Knowing Merchan will rule against him, could then say, while we take this up to the United States Supreme Court, this other thing, you have to hold off the sentencing. You think about it as a football example, like a blocker. And so the blocker's blocking the sentencing while it goes up to the Supreme Court. Then there's a pathology of Donald Trump that people need to know. I think he's very embarrassed about being a convicted felon, the same way he's very embarrassed about losing the 2020 election. It's a scarlet letter for him. So his attacks at MeidasTouch, Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, his cabal of people who are to blame, the same way he comes up with all of his conspiracies in 2020, is a way for him to say, I didn't really do it. It was unfair. It was all these other bad actors. It was the deep state. They did it. Because even though he can make these immunity arguments, we'll do another take. He makes his immunity arguments in Georgia. There's a more, he doesn't want to win on the technicality alone. He wants his Supreme Court to say, Donald, you didn't do, you're not a felon, because he doesn't want to be known as a felon. That's why, that's the pathology part. These other people did it. It was the Meidas YouTube channel. They convinced the jury, not me doing actual felonies. That's what I think's going on as well. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, although one quick point there, look, I long ago gave up trying to psychoanalyze Trump, but there is this weird psychopathology. The point you made is right, but you can see why he doesn't want to be a felon in history. But what about he's still trying? He really is, and you can see this in his nominations or his designations to relitigate the 2020 election and somehow have history justify his refrain from way back. And he's still he redefames Stormy Daniels. He's got this weird thing when if there's a black mark in his past that's public, he wants to go back in time and erase it, and he can't let it go. Some of the people he's chosen now are the ones who, Pam Bondi's an example, who way back when in 2020 supported the election hoax. So that's just this strange, but I think really strong motivator for him.
There you have it, Harry Litman. You write about this all and more on your new Substack, the Talking Feds Substack. Then you got the Talking Feds YouTube channel as well, which is just taken off. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to the Talking Feds YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the Talking Feds Substack. Harry, thank you.
And I'm a little pisser, but make sure you still rankle Donald Trump by also subscribing to the Meidas network and amplifying a voice that is just totally apparently irritating him no end.
Right here on my 2018 laptop from my living room. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Harry. Everybody hit subscribe. Have a great day.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.